Hey guys, this is Naresh here. In this video series, I will explain how to build hybrid framework. So I have already covered few topics in the series. So let me bring up my OneNote before I get started. So as a part of discussion, I have already covered what is framework. I have covered single and multi-dimensional array, and I have also covered how to read data from properties file. So you can check out all these videos from this playlist here. If you will go to YouTube, uh, so you can go to YouTube and there is a playlist which I have already shared with you with the name Selenium Hybrid Framework. You have the video 1, 2, 3, which I have already shared. Now, in this particular video, I'm going to tell how to read data from Excel sheet. And this information, all these four topics that we have covered, reading data from framework, from arrays, from properties file, and from Excel sheet, all of this information we are going to make use of when we start building the framework, right? So let's look at how we read data from Excel sheet. But before I do that, let me open an Excel sheet for you. So I'll go to this directory on my machine where I have this Excel sheet. So let me open this file ddt.xlsx. This is an Excel sheet I have with me. So let's try to look at the data and then we'll write program to read the data. Okay, now this file which you see here in front of you, this is a workbook, right? Now this is a workbook and these are different sheets. So this is one sheet which is employee data. This is sheet 1, this is sheet 2, right? So this is a sheet and this is a row, 1 row, 2 row, 3 row, right? These are row. And for each row we have a cell. This is a cell, this is a cell. Okay, so keeping this in mind, we will try to write program to read data from Excel sheet. Now, how do we read data from Excel sheet? For that, we make use of Apache POI. So what is Apache POI? Let's ask Google what is Apache POI. So I'll go to Google here and I'll say Apache POI. If you will go inside here and uh, so let me bring up so here if you will read, welcome to Apache POI tutorial. Sometimes we need to read data from Microsoft Excel files or need to generate reports in Excel format. So basically you can even go to the official documentation of this Apache POI. So you can read more about Apache POI from here. Basically the idea of making Apache POI is or making use of Apache POI, which is a third party jar, is to basically read data from the Excel sheet, right? Now you can go to the download, you can download the jar files and you can include it in your class path. So for example, you can download this zip file. The zip file has the required jar files which you can download and include it in your class path of the project. And then we can make use of the Apache POI libraries to read the data from Excel sheet. In my case, what I have already done is that I have already downloaded the jar files of Apache POI and I have copied them here in the POI folder. Right now, I have to add it to the class path. So what I can do is I can select first jar and I can press shift and select the last jar, and then I can right click and add all of them to the build path. Why we add it to the build path? Because we are going to use these jar files, and in order to use these jar files, the jar file should be in the build path of our project. Now let me bring up my notes of reading data from Excel sheet using Apache POI. So I will go here. Now I have taken this description as you see in front of you here from this link here. You can also read from here. So there is a concept of workbook. One is XSSF workbook and one is HSSF workbook. So if you are using the recent version of Excel sheet with an extension XLSX, then we create an instance of XSF workbook. Else, if you have XLS file, which is an older version of Excel sheet, you have to make use of this HSSF workbook, right? Now, I have already told you that this file in front of you is a workbook. Workbook has a sheet, right? These are sheets, and in sheet there are rows, and in the rows we have cells, right? So keeping this in mind, let me show you how to read data from the Excel sheet. So basically this is an Excel sheet which I have, and I'm going to read data from this Excel sheet which is in front of you. So I'll bring up my Eclipse and I'll create a package here, and I'm going to call it com.c2t.frame framework.execel, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file here. I'll create a new file, read from execel, and I'll create a main method, main, right? Now let's start to read data from the Excel sheet. Now there are few steps involved to read the data from the Excel sheet. So in order to understand those steps, what we have to do is I'm going to copy a few steps in front of you, and then I'll use those steps to read data from Excel sheet so that you can understand it better. Okay, so these are some of the steps which I'm going to follow. So first of all, I have to create an input stream. Why input stream? Because we are trying to read data from a file. So there is a concept of input stream in Java, wherein when you want to read data, you have to create an input stream. So to create an input stream, first of all, I'll create a file object, file f equal to new of file. Now this file comes from java.io package, so I have to import java.io, import port java.io.star. I'll make it star so that it will import the other required file as well, and here I'll specify the name of the file. So it is ddd.xlsx. So I'll say ddt.xlsx, right? So I have created a file reference to this particular Excel sheet. Now I'll create file input stream. Now when you perform a file operation, IO operation, input output operation, it throws an exception. So I'll put it in try catch block, try file, and then here I'll create file input stream, file input input stream. I'll call it FIS equal to new of file input put stream, right? And in that I will specify this file f which I have created here, right? So I have created an input stream. Now if you will remember, I told you that this is a workbook, right? So first of all, what we have to do is we have to create an object of a workbook. Why? Because we have to read data from the workbook, right? So I will, as I told you, that this is a workbook you have to create, which is XSSF workbook. So I will type that here, XSSF work, control space bar. It will give me it will auto complete for me, and I'll say workbook equal to new XSSF workbook, right? Now here let's go to the documentation of this particular workbook. I'll go to Google and I'm going to type documentation. So when I go to the documentation, it takes me to the official website of Apache POI documentation. Inside here, you will find that there is one constructor which accepts input stream as an argument, right? So I'm going to use this thread constructor which I have highlighted in front of you. So I'll go here, and inside this I will pass that stream, right? Okay, so I have created a workbook, which is this particular Excel sheet in front of you. Now from this workbook, I need to fetch a sheet. So as you can see in the step here, you create a workbook first, right? So we have created a workbook, then I create a sheet. How do I create a sheet? On that workbook, I said WRK book dot get sheet, SHEET, right? So here I can give the name of the sheet. So what is the name of the sheet in this case? Here it is employee data, right? So I'll copy this, rename and copy that, and I will get the sheet. Now this method, if you will go in the documentation and see, get, what was that? Get sheet, SHEET, right? So this returns a XSSF sheet, right? So I will put here XSSF sheet SH, right? Sheet, I'll call it. So this returns a sheet for me, right? Now sheet means I have access to this particular sheet. This is sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, but because I have given the sheet name as employee data, so I have the sheet as employee sheet here, right? Now on the sheet, what I have to do is I have to get a row, right? I have to get this row, this row, this row, right? So I will go to the documentation of this particular sheet. I'll click on this, and if you will come down here, come down, you will see there will be an option to get GETRO. So if you will see, it has an option wherein you can get the rows, right? So how do we get the row? Where is there is one more method. If I search, or rather, let me go back to the documentation here, up. So let me go to the beginning. So here, if you will see that this particular method, which is an iterator method, it returns all the rows in this particular sheet, right? So as I have specified here in the beginning, in the comment here, you define, once you get the sheet here, right? I've got the sheet, you define a row iterator. So I'm going to fetch the row iterator. So what do? I'll say sheet dot iterator. So this returns all the rows to me. So what are those rows? Those rows are this particular is an iterator, okay, which contains the rows, right? So I'll say ITER8 or iterator, and then it returns a row iterator, which is ROWS. I'll call it rows, right? Now I have to import this ROW object, which is an object coming from Apache POI, so I'll import it, right? So now what I have done is I have basically got an iterator. Iterator means a way to iterate row 1, row 2, right, row 3, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to access the entries of the row one by one from this iterator. So how do we do that? We say while rows dot has next, right? So if it has next means it has next row, it will return true and it will come inside this while loop, and then I'll say rows dot next. So when I say rows dot next, if you will see here, if you press F2 on this method, you will see that it returns, let me do that again. If you say F2, it returns a row, right? So it can be ROW equal to this. So basically at this point of time, I'm accessing one single row here, which is this particular row, right? Now, after you access the row, if you will see here, after you get the row, you get the cell iterator, right? So what I can do is I can say row dot cell iterator. So it returns me an iterator to the cells. So iterator to the cell means cell 1, cell 2, cell 3, cell 4, cell 5, right? So in this case, there are only two cells, cell 1 and cell 2, right? So it will give me a cell iterator. How do I know it? If I press F2 on this method, it returns an iterator of cells, right? So I'll say CELLS equal to, now this cell is coming from Apache POI. We have to import it again here. So I imported it, right? Now I have got cells iterator. So I have to start iteration of those cells. So I'll say while CELLS dot has next, then I will say CELLS dot next, right? So it will give me a single cell, which is this particular cell, hello, or this particular cell, this one, right? So I will say CELL equal to that particular cell, right? Now if I sys out of cell here, so what it will do, that it will display this particular cell for me, right? So let me just sys out a separator here. Okay, now let me try to run this program. Right click, run as. Java application. So you will see first it gives me 10, then second value from that particular row, then second row, then third row, right? So once again, I will try to explain this whole thing. What I have done is I have created a file input stream, then I create a workbook. From that workbook, I got a sheet, right? Now, till here, I believe it is very simple. Now it is important part. There is a concept of iterator. What is an iterator? Iterator is used to access the elements by iterating that particular structure which is there, right? So when I say sheet dot iterator, it gives me an iterator of rows. Means that it will iterate row 1, it will iterate row 2, and it will iterate row 3, right? One by one it will do the iteration of the rows. So when I say rows dot has next, so initially what happens, let me explain in more details how rows the iterator works. So if you will go here, let's say I'll delete this. So when you create a row iterator is like a pointer. It is pointing just before the first row here. Okay. Okay. Now when you say rows dot has next, what happens? This particular arrow, which is here initially, it will get moved from here to the next location here, right? And because it moves here, this particular entry rows dot has next will return a true, right? Why? Because there is a row here, right? This row is present, right? Because it returns a true, it will go inside. And then when you say row dot next, rows dot next, then what will happen, that this particular row is nothing but this particular row which we are accessing. Fine. Now once this is done, then I say rows dot cell iterator. Now what happens when you do that, rows dot cell iterator? In that case, what will happen? One more iterator is created, and that iterator is for only this particular row. So there is a one more iterator which points here only for this particular row. Now when I say in my code here that that cells dot has next, so this particular row iterator, it returns me a iterator of cells. So what is a cell? Basically cell is this particular cell, right? So when I say that rows dot cell iterator, it creates a pointer which points just before the first cell of this row, right? So this is first cell, this is second cell, so this is just before that cell. Now when I do this particular line cells dot has next, what happens? This particular iterator, it moves from here to this location on the first cell, right? And because it moves there, and when I say cell dot has next will find a value here, right? This cell is there present, so it will return true and it will go inside, right? And once it goes inside, when I say cell dot next, it returns me the value of this hello here. Fine. Similarly, again when it comes in the while loop and I say cell dot has next, what happens? This particular pointer or iterator will move to the second element. So this is how it will keep moving, first in the rows and then in each row cell by cell. It will fetch the entries from this particular Excel sheet and it will display you the values when we run the program. So let me run this whole program once again. Right click, run as Java application. So you will see that from the first row I have got hello and 10.0 from the cells. These hello is a cell entry, 10 is also a cell entry. Then high and fine is basically a single row, and from that single row I get cell 1, cell 2, right? And then cell and cell, right? So basically this is how we can read data from the Excel sheet. Now all this information of reading data from Excel sheet, and in the previous videos where I have discussed how to read data from properties file and how to read multi-dimensional array, all that information I'm going to make use of when we start working on building the hybrid framework, which is a combination of keyword framework and data framework, right? So with this, I'm concluding the discussion of my prerequisite of creating a hybrid framework. Thank you so much.